Hey guys, we're checking out Programmer Humor's last year's best hits. Because there's no one funnier than the programmers who lost their minds writing code. Anyhow, your company's highest paid engineer showing up to meetings. I have this theory that kinda looks like this. That looks are inversely correlated with skill. But why is that? Because why would you try to look cool if you're cool? You wouldn't. So if you see someone clean shaven, wearing their possibly pricey suit, first time, you know for a fact that they are total noobs. I'm personally partial to the hackerman style. I like to add that anytime I sub the online forms because I know that some developer is going to see it and wonder if they have a bug. Yeah. That is presuming that the developer would care. My favorite Unicode character is the zero without space. Zero with space. You can implement imperceptibly smuggle the character inside any string. Oh my god. Evil to evil, you must be stopped. But in most cases, you would be just screwing with yourself. Wait, people think we check random form data? Yeah. You would be screwing with yourself. Software actually works for 99% of the engineers. Someone way smarter than you solved a really hard problem and now you build on top of their solution like adult Legos and think you're a genius. Yeah, letting me suppose that you possibly can do the same thing as them, it might not be a good idea. Because you might make a mistake. So, essentially best practice is just use what they already did. Which would already make sense. Which seems to work just fine until you get to the point like, oh my god, I don't understand what's going on. At which point, right now, again, no need to mention the past, you would just ask ChatGPT. And if it works, it's like, okay, good enough. Let's move on. Designers when a company hires another designer. Am I not enough? Engineers when company hires another engineer. Apes together strong. I guess the main difference in philosophy would be that programmers relentlessly copy, right? And might even pride themselves on it. Well, designers also copy, but also they probably would not admit to it as readily. Windows has a complex and graceful shutdown process to make sure programs close correctly. Linux. Windows so good at this that it might get stuck shutting down. I think Win 7 as a customer was okay, but since then they're kind of losing their minds. And this day and age, Linux is truly the king. Artists talking to each other. No, stop saying your art is terrible. It's so beautiful. I wish I was good as you. You're lying. My work is so bad. Programmers talking to each other. This is the worst fucking code I've ever seen. I know, right? Actually, it's your old code. Yeah, that is painful to look at. Especially at some kind of a phase where, you know, I don't need to do many things. I don't need to write simple, easily readable code. So in a way, a noob code might be better. Because at least that is readable. But if you are kind of like too smart, that might be even worse. Like you would see, great example. If you go on lead code, then you might see like one-liner solutions. Like, oh yeah, man, check out my one-liner. Just like, yeah, okay. Just never do that ever. Anywhere. A library I'm using. Please take 5 minutes to read the documentation. Well, unfortunately, there's no easy answer. I would say more documentations these days are okay, but generally speaking, they tend to be outdated, which is not what you want to see. Or perhaps even worse, it is just an endless depth, and you don't know which part is relevant, which part do you need, and like there's no quick start. It would not take 5 minutes, it would take 5 weeks to read that. Skills needed to get a job, skills to do the job, and interview skills. I mean, it makes sense. They want to get the best guy. Big private key. Lady Gaga. This is actually very interesting because we're getting closer to the dead internet. So everyone's just using bots for their social media. And the bots are talking to each other and possibly trying to look a little bit legit. While they're like, you know, every 10 or 20th time, they're also doing some kind of promotion. So you might see, although I'm not looking for it, that someone just goes on the political subreddit and they just looks at the post and just builds bots based on that, and the bots will make posts that get upvoted, and those could serve many purposes, I suppose. But suppose they are even not interested in politics, they're just like farming upvotes to look legit and then just promoting other stuff on the side. But I suppose my main point would be, what is the point of anything? If you're just talking to bots, you just have Lady Gaga with her bot, and everyone on social media is a bot, But suppose they weren't even a bot, then they are either a marketer or someone who is very questionably spending their time. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. It must be imposter syndrome. Nope, just incompetence. Definitely imposter syndrome. But also, it takes time to get good. So, if you just look at others, then they might try to look better than they are. Or you might come to this conclusion that, oh my god, they might be super genius. And like, yeah, that guy has like many years of experience. What's the biggest lie you've heard from a programmer? It should work now? Yeah. Those are the lies we tell ourselves. Me logging off with zero progress made on a bug I was assigned 8 hours ago. Fuck you, I'll see you tomorrow. But this is actually kind of bad, because supposing you're not making any progress for a long time, it can be a little demoralizing. You can really dread returning to it. Especially if you're not even getting closer to a solution, right? If you're systematically getting closer to a solution, it could still suck, but at least you're getting closer. Breaking news. Parrot learns to say, how's the project going? Gets promoted to project manager. It's okay. I have the perfect retort. Before I automate my job, I will also, before that, automate project management. Computer scientists, we have invented a virtual dumbass who's constantly wrong. Tech CEOs, let's add it to every product. Especially if you daisy chain it, I suppose, and you really trust the outcome of whatever AI is giving you. Now, to be clear, I'm definitely an AI fan, but anyone who's thinks like 100% AI is a good idea, well, they are probably not thinking. If open source is so great, then how come this app developed for free by hobbyists is slightly worse than the one developed for millions of dollars by an all-star team of designers and engineers? That may not be even the case though, because it depends on how many people work on it. Because let's say that you have like a all-star team, right? Let's just say you have like 20 people, they are all-star, whatever that means. But then if you look at the open source projects, then you have 2,000 guys just committing to that. And it's gonna be tricky too, because like if you have 20 guys, then they don't know about that many things, I suppose. They can know about that many things. But in the 2,000 person project, then you might have a guy who's never gonna make the 20-man team, but they're gonna make the 2,000-man team. So my point is, you can pitch in with your expertise, and you don't have any incentive to overdevelop it. Just add bloat. It's just like you're just trying to make it good. Most cybersecurity experts today, their younger years of illegally breaking into computers and websites. Well, ideally, no one found out. Also, worth saying that in the OG times, or possibly even today, most websites are not really secure. Like, imagine like an empty field with a door in front of it, I suppose, and the door is closed, but not locked. If you go around it or try to open the door, it's just gonna open. Now, I understand that it might not look like this, because you're probably visiting a lot of top 100 websites constantly, but most websites are not that good. And what is even illegally breaking into computers? If you have the drive, then you have their everything, right? Company hires inexperienced junior, provides comprehensive training. Junior, once they have worked for 1 year. Yeah, because they refuse to increase pay because we invested in you. So the person goes and makes the double elsewhere. Yeah, these workers just don't understand what it takes to run a business, you know? If you're not sure, I'm gonna teach you. It is to make as much money as possible of your customers and of your workers. That is all. Nothing else. So my daughter says, you work at Microsoft. I'm a lead developer on Windows Search. You have exactly 10 seconds to get the fuck out of my house. Well, I don't know. I don't use Windows anymore. But the little that I use, Windows Search, it was constantly looking for like ads and just scammy stuff, right? Also news too. Windows essentially banking on it that their users are idiots, complete idiots, who are just gonna take whatever Windows gives them. And this might be true for many, but it was not true for me. Why does this button not work? Have you tried licking it on lick? Right. Now, a spell checker would actually catch this, so that's kind of useful. But technically this might not be incorrect, although it kind of depends on what you're using. So the difference between TypeScript and JavaScript would be night and day. The code is documentation. Looking for documentation. Where is it? Making the documentation. No. Especially these days, I'm not even sure if this is a plus or a minus. You might have the AI writing the documentation. So that's an interesting predicament we have here. Because if the AI writes the documentation, then it might be more useful if you just don't even consult it. You just ask AI to tell you what the heck is going on. Now you might say that I wouldn't do that. Sure. But suppose you want to or need to get as much work done as possible, then you have to use all the tools available, even if you're cutting one or two corners, or all of them. Game devs Dan. I coded Roller Coaster Tycoon entirely in assembly so it can run on most machines. We made a shooter game that only takes up 97,800 280 bytes of space. Yeah, OG games were kind of different. If you have a computer, then it most likely runs. Try it or new game. First few levels are free shareware. Minimum requirements. So as long as your computer can turn on. But this, interestingly, led to games focusing more on actual gameplay. Because, like, you cannot make the graphic good, right? Even if you could make the graphic better, it wouldn't probably not make a sense. Too much sense to do that. And you would even see this these days, that the highest rated games, or possibly many of the most popular games, are not the most graphically demanding. You can be the one who tries to be the one who stand out with graphics, or you don't care. Yeah, my game is gonna run fine if your computer is 10 years old, or possibly older. AAA game devs now. Sorry, we can't work on fixing the game. One of our employees keeps stealing breast milk from the female employees. What? Our game is 500 gigabytes. Yeah, that's so annoying. So, what kind of PC you're supposed to build if you're a gamer, I guess? I guess you might have a bunch of old hard drives. Or buy a new one if you want that. But if you want an SSD, then I guess you might be looking at like a 2 terabytes or possibly a 4 terabyte SSD. So I don't know. Now, if you're not playing games or playing games that are not that big, then possibly even 500 gigabyte SSD is gonna be fine. Or 1 terabyte is gonna be plenty. But if you have a 150 gigabyte game, then what are you gonna do? I guess you can try to reinstall it when you want to use it, I guess. Or you just have to store it. I guess the best solution would be, if you're like big on gaming, is that you have the space for it. But it possibly even doubly sucks, because if the game is big, let's say that you try to run it, especially you might have a lot of games, like let's say that you have a game that's like 200 gigabytes, and like, oh yeah, also there's a 50 gigabyte update patch. Yeah, that's the point. So you're like, you want to play the game, and like, oh yeah, like I haven't played this game in like, maybe like a month or something. Let's just play it right now. It's like, oh no, you can't play it. You're just gonna be doing the download or something. You do the update too. I'm like, oh my god, I don't care. I think gaming is kind of in a bad spot right now if you just look at the whole thing. But if you just look at the indie scene, then things are better than ever. So I suppose a good question would be that, would your game be good if it looked like a total potato? And if your answer is no, it needs to look good or something, then probably the gameplay sucks too. Maybe it looks good, but I can look at pictures anyway. Optimization? Just get a better PC, bro. You need at least next gen to play without our game crashing. Yeah. We're kind of getting into a reality, or fully into it, I guess, especially like it started a few years ago, where video cards are just really expensive and you might need them to even have a chance at playing the new games, which probably suck anyway. So these days, I don't really game. I don't game, but if I game, then I would more identify with the philosophy of the patient gamers. Our single player game is always online because fuck you, that's why. But to be fair, that's almost certainly a studio decision. Because you might see that, let's say that the game might suck, but the devs cared more than the business boys. And also, some of the devs really cared, but it still did not save the game. I suppose if money wasn't an object, then I would easily be in the indie camp. No contest. Even if you can just join the AAA studio, it doesn't matter. Even if you can be the top guy, I guess almost certainly you couldn't be, but suppose you even could be. I might as well have just your creative freedom to make a game. So if you like the idea of making games and you join possibly a team that makes games, you might realize that you are not making the game, but you're kind of like a cog in a process. So you're not really the creative brain behind the operation. You possibly could be, and it could be a good time, but probably that's not going to be most people there. So you might not be anywhere near the fun part of the process, whatever you might deem for the fun part, but just doing the chores. Writes unmaintainable code, leaves the company. Right. Sounds like job security to me. Possibly they're gonna seek his expertise as a consultant. And if he stayed, then you just cannot get rid of this guy. Take, for example, death, war, Windows 11. There are many things in this world that humanity would be happier without. Windows 7 was peak, yes. I don't get paid for Win 11. It works fine, no issues for my business machine or personal machine. It's not necessarily an issue with bugs or anything. It's a fact that it constantly tries to force you into things you don't want. And you have to fight it and use third-party tools to remove a bunch of things that range from annoying to harmful. Yeah, but also you cannot win because they can change anything. Even if you disable and opt out and change the defaults, give it one update and you will be surprised. For starters, it wants you to log in with a Microsoft account right from the installation menu. And they keep patching exploits people use to bypass that mandatory account. Force suggestions in the start menu, telemetry, and the list goes on, with Recall being the new one in town. It is a simple situation, really. They're just gonna keep adding more BS their users are willing to take. But Win 11 is a good example that you fundamentally have an okay software, just mix in with a bunch of things you don't want to see. But you don't have a choice, because that's business for Microsoft. And that is why open source is so important. Not just that open source stuff is usually the best, but also no one's gonna try to make you pay up or try to make your experience worse, because that's what you usually see. I can even bring up games, just to circle back a little bit to a topic that was thrown up earlier, is that, yeah, you can try to make a game and try to get paid, but also you can have open source games. There are many of them, but suppose, just to bring up an example, Beyond All Reason, and you see that they're just trying to make the game good. But most, I would argue, don't care about the product. They are just using it as a vehicle to get paid, and will happily make the product worse to possibly get paid even more. And as long as something is not open source, this will happen basically every time, as long as they like money.